Our next speaker will be deepening our knowledge between the relation among landscape, history, and society. So I would welcome Cristina Montiel for his next speech. Thank you. ¿Cómo se hace, Marta, para salir?
Good morning. Thank you very much to the organizers for this opportunity to present our research. I'm going to introduce you the main results of our research in the university about historical geography, and we're working about the relationship between fire regimes and landscape evolution since the 16th century. So let me show you one of the examples that are demonstrating that the use of fire has been always present in our landscapes since at least since the 16th century, but we have evidences since the 15th century. This is one of the legal regulations of a common grazing community in the inner regions in Spain, which are demonstrated that punition existed at that time, and it was a problem at that time too. So fire is a part of our history, of our landscapes, of our culture. From these evidences, we are trying to reconstruct our forest fire regime, because when we are talking about forest fire regime, we cannot refer just to the last 30 or 50 years. Fire regime is something with a historical scope, and we need then to have data longer than the statistical series. I'm always surprised when I listen to people talking about historical fires, and they are just referring to the wildfires in the 90s. That's not really historical. Historical is before the statistical data. So we need another kind of documents for reconstructing this history. And we are dealing with geohistorical sources, administrative documents, judicial documents, police documents, and also, of course, cartography. Evidences since the 19th and also 18th century that we have found that are showing us that fire before the regime we have today was different. Fire regime in the historical fire regime was not the current wildfire regime. This is our main history and our hypothesis of work. We had a fire regime, and now we have a historical regime. Pardon, sorry, a wildfire regime. Sorry. Fire in history was small fires, frequent fires, and we have demonstrated it in the inner regions in Spain. We are really proud about this map. This map is georeferencing all the records that we have found, almost 7,000 records, with the whole documentation. We are really proud about, because we think that this is the first historical register of fire use and wildfires in Europe. And the older record is from the end of the 15th century, 1492, in Salamanca province. What has been the evolution of fire regime in history? Of course, we are looking at the causes of fire, and also at the frequency of burnt surface and the size of these fires. And we have fires, for instance, at the end of the 19th century, one fire, but it is not the only one. This is a very remarkable one. 650 hectares, 4 days burning, 14 references. It was in Valle de Iruelas, in Avila province, in the inner regions of Spain. But with this fire, there are another 133 historical wildfires of more than 500 hectares. So there was also big, large wildfires in the history. But that was not exactly the regime. That was an exception. And it was not the normal issue. We had another situation. So the question is, where and when does it change? What was the moment of this change? This is the representation of our records in the timeline, and it's really clear, even if the scales are different because this is the representation of the Central System mountain range in blue, and in the other color, the brown one, is referring to Gredos Mountain, and then the two case studies at the local level that we are working on, because we are working at 3 scales: the regional, the natural regions, then the massive scale, and then the local ones. I will show you afterwards. And there are 2 clear period transitions, in history. First one is at the end of 19th century, second one is in the 50s. Almost all of us are talking a lot about the second period transition as a well-known topic, but it is not yet so well-known because it has not been documented and proved. So we are trying to prove it and to find what were the causes, the territorial context, the circumstances that were creating this problem, and where, and with what kind of landscapes, because this is prior to the wildfire generations. We are talking about the background of wildfire generations. This is the first period transition, and this is the second one. Our second hypothesis is, are we, and this is the title of this presentation, are we facing the third period transition? Are we evolving once again from a wildfire regime to a fire regime? Okay, because of prescribed burning practices, because of recent fire regulations, because of all of that. I'm going very fast now, but anyway, the presentation will be on the Pau Costa Foundation website. So I will not say anything about the statistical issue and the third hypothesis. Let me show you that. Red points are the historical fires. Blue points are the statistical one. So spatial patterns have evolved. Temporal patterns are different. And this is one of the case studies at the local level. We are working hard at this scale, trying to find what have been the contextual factors that have been influencing these period transitions and this fire regime evolution in different places. So finding that really at local level, the situation are quite different and we cannot generalize. So you need different elements and you need different methodologies when working at different scales. So depending on your objectives. Very quickly, we have found 3 fire types in the historical evolution. So when dealing and when talking about from evidence, from historical evidences, when dealing with historical fires, we can talk about the fire type of small wildfire, which is the more frequent one, very often, and it is recorded because it's socioeconomic impact. Another very common situation are long historical series of wildfires, recorded since the 17th century, for instance, and we have several examples of that. This is just one example. And the third one are large wildfires, because there were large wildfires in history. And so from these three types of historical wildfires, we have obtained what we are calling fire landscapes. Because fire and landscape are two elements very close, with close relationship. And yesterday Mark talked about, he said, the only way to stop fire is having resistant open forests. These landscapes are related to different fire regimes, different historical fire regimes evolution. So you need to understand what have been this relationship, this historical relationship, in order to manage this situation now. This is the very last slide, just to synthesize our main ideas from this data, methodology, etc. Our main idea and message is that we had, before the second period transition, we had controlled fire. We had a fire regime. We had a situation where this is an application form for burning in summer at the year 3038. You cannot read it, but online you can do it. So an application form, year 38, Cáceres, for burning in summer. Then we had our second period transition, 50 years, and we fall into the wildfire regime, the catastrophic fires. This is the image of Gata's wildfire. It was 2 years ago. This is the image today, but you know, of course, this situation. So where we are now? We are more farther than this situation. We have large wildfires as our current problem because of fire suppression policies and because of an attitude that was and is wrong. That has been already demonstrated. It is not being efficacious. It's clear. So can we move to a third period transition? Can we move now from wildfire regime to, as Mark said yesterday, regular fire regime? That's all, but let me finish with the sentences of Mark. Thank you very much.